Hello, Thomas Malchow here. In this video, I'm going to show you a few things you can do at home to help stop a sway or a slide. Doing these things will improve your ability to use the ground correctly during your swing, giving you better balance, sequencing, and ultimately more power. Now, it is important to understand when it comes to fixing swing faults, there are multiple variables to consider, not the least of which, of course, is technique. However, the most important and impactful tool you have when it comes to your swing is your body. If you have imbalances in your body, it will not matter how hard you try to fix your swing faults. They will persist. Our imbalances dictate our swing mechanics, and therefore they impose a huge influence over our striking ability and ultimately our handicap. If you want to take your game to the next level, you must address your imbalances. Now, a sway is too much lateral movement away from the target during your backswing. This sets you up poorly for your downswing, creates all sorts of issues with timing, and as a result, your upper body ends up dominating the downswing, and we end up with a loss of power. A slide is the opposite. Too much lateral movement towards the target during your downswing. This makes it very difficult for you to rotate your pelvis correctly, ultimately leading to a loss of power and inconsistent ball striking. But what's causing this lateral movement as you go through your swing? Pronation distortion syndrome is one of the three main postural dysfunctions outlined in the scientific literature. It is very common, and if you have it, it will be very difficult for you to stop this side-to-side movement. Somebody who has pronation distortion syndrome will have flat feet and knock knees. Now, as with all postural dysfunctions, sometimes it's very easy to see, and sometimes it's not easy at all, and will take a trained eye. When it comes to fixing it, the two most important joints to consider are the ankle and the hip. And we've talked about the ankle a bit before in previous videos, and we'll dive deeper into that in the future. But here I'd like to talk about what's happening at the hip and what we can do to fix it. So at the hip, pronation distortion syndrome is characterized by too much adduction, adduction. That's when your femur and your knee move in, okay? And that's what gives you the knock knees. So this is adduction, this is abduction, adduction, abduction. So pronation distortion syndrome is an imbalance between the adductors of the hip and the abductors of the hip. So the adductors of the hip are a group of muscles collectively referred to as the anterior adductors, and they have a propensity to become short and overactive. Remember, when we have a short and overactive muscle on one side of a joint, we will automatically have a long and underactive muscle on the opposite side of that joint due to altered reciprocal inhibition. The primary hip abductor, the muscle on the opposite side of the joint in this case, is the gluteus medius. So that means if you have pronation distortion syndrome, you will have an inhibited gluteus medius. And this is disastrous to your swing, and I'll show you why. So the gluteus medius originates from the top of your ilium, which is your pelvis here, the bony part of your pelvis, crosses the hip, and inserts into the greater trochanter. So its line of pull is virtually straight up and down, okay? It does a little bit of external rotation, but this line of pull is what makes it so proficient at abducting your hip. Your gluteus medius doesn't just pull your knee out, it holds your pelvis up. It's the reason why we can balance on one leg. It stabilizes your pelvis in the frontal plane. It keeps you moving from side to side, right? Your gluteus medius is the primary frontal plane stabilizer. If you have an inhibited gluteus medius due to pronation distortion syndrome, you won't be able to stop this lateral movement during your swing. It will persist. So I'm going to show you here a few things you can do at home to get your gluteus medius activated and get your pelvis stabilized. Now, when it comes to any dysfunction or any swing fault, extra glute work can help a lot. And I have some serious circuits that target your glutes in all sorts of different ways, from stabilization, endurance, reactivity, and power. I'm going to show you 4 things here you can do at home to get the balance restored around your hip and get the firing rate of your gluteus medius increased. Now, remember, when it comes to fixing any postural dysfunction, we have an algorithm we follow. We first inhibit the muscles that have become short and overactive. And we use either a myofascial release ball or a foam roller to do that. The pressure applied by the ball or by the foam roller initiates a reflex inside that muscle, encouraging that muscle to relax. We then use stretching techniques to lengthen that muscle, returning it to optimal length. When the muscle is at optimal length, we have optimal cross bridging between actin and myosin and optimal force production. We then turn our attention to the long and underactive muscles, and we use isolated strengthening techniques to increase the firing rate of these guys, shortening them and returning them to optimal length. Then we use integration exercises. These are full body dynamic movements which increase your neuromuscular control in all three planes, and these exercises ultimately increase your capacity to play golf more. So I'm going to show you one release technique, one stretch, one activation exercise, and one integration exercise here. Okay, so I'm going to use a myofascial release ball for the release. You can use a foam roller. We are going to inhibit the anterior adductors. We're going to go straight at the beast here. So the anterior adductors are basically your groin. So anywhere in here, we're going to survey the area with the ball or with the foam roller, looking for the most tender spot. So if you're using a foam roller, you would lay it parallel to your body lengthwise this way, okay? You then get down on the ground, get your knee up, and we'll survey the area, again, searching for the most tender spot. Once you find that spot, we would sit on for 30 seconds. We're not going to do the whole time here. I just want to show you the techniques and how to go through this circuit. So we would hold this for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, okay? Do both sides, of course. Once you've done that, we are then going to stretch the anterior adductors. And the way we do that is we're going to have a bit of a stagger stance. So if I'm stretching my right side, I'm going to put my left foot in line with my right toes. Okay, so I'm a little bit stepped forward here, and I tuck my pelvis under slightly, and then I lean to the side. And I make sure that both of my feet are pointing straight ahead. If I let this foot turn out, I'm just reinforcing the dysfunction I'm trying to get myself out of. Okay, so we got to keep this foot pointed straight ahead, this guy straight ahead, pelvis tucked under, lean to the side, looking for a stretch right here. Again, hold this for 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Okay, once we've done that, we then turn our attention to the long and underactive muscles. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to go straight after the gluteus medius, get this guy firing. So we're going to use a 12-inch fit loop here. I'm going to place it around my feet. I'll get down here first. And you want a stiff band, right? You could do this without a band, but certainly a band is better. Now, ultimately, you would like to be against a wall if possible. But if you don't have a wall, then just make sure that everything's in line. Now, with any isolated activation exercise, we're going to have overactive synergists that we need to inhibit. These are the guys that have become synergistically dominant to the inhibited muscle. So the muscle that has become synergistically dominant to the gluteus medius when it's inhibited is our tensor fascia lata. So we need a way to inhibit the tensor fascia lata. And we can do that by putting our toe on the ground, right? So on my top foot, notice I've placed the toe on the ground. What that does causes some internal rotation of my tibia. The tensor fascia lata is an external rotator of the tibia. And so by internally rotating the tibia, we've reciprocally inhibited the muscle. So now we have the synergists inhibited. My body's in line. I got my belly button drawn in. And I'm going to come up for 1 second, hold at the top here for 2, and then down for 4. It's this eccentric lowering of my knee that really gets the firing rate of the gluteus medius increased, okay? So up, hold for 2, down for 4. And we would do 15 reps of this on each side. Do not let yourself roll back. If you roll back, you're just cheating yourself. You want to stay straight up and down Make the gluteus medius do the work. Okay, again, 15 reps. Once we've completed 15 reps of that on both sides, then what we would do is use an integration exercise to then bring this all together, increase our neuromuscular control. Now, one of my favorite integration exercises for both the gluteus medius and the gluteus maximus is the single leg touchdown, okay? So again, standing on our right leg, left foot just an inch off the ground. The foot does not move in front of you nor behind you. You're going to have your right hip or your right hand on your right hip. Take your left hand and keeping your back straight and your chin tucked in, reaching down towards your foot. Hold that for 2 seconds at the bottom, up for 1. So it's down for 4. Hold for 2, up for 1. So taking this opposite hand and reaching towards the other foot causes a little internal rotation at the hip, which increases the firing of that muscle a little bit more. So again, with any postural dysfunction, it requires a lot more sophistication to get out of it than just this, but doing these 4 things at home will go a long way in increasing the firing rate of your gluteus medius and helping you stop this lateral movement from side to side. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.